Hi there, welcome back to the Ephemeris podcast. I'm your host, Aphelion, and I actually don't have much to say in the intro to this episode. I've been a little busy, so this episode will be coming later than expected, as I mentioned in the community post, and podcast episode views have been going well, shorts views have been going well, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's just get into today's episode since I don't have much to say. Today we're going to be covering Giordano Bruno. I know I mentioned Thomas Digges, but the depth of Bruno's work is not only going to cover what Thomas Digges did, anyways, it's also going to go a little bit further and give us more insight into the Copernican model and not the Copernican model. I think I made a typo in the notes and decided to roll with it for some reason last episode. But yeah, let's just talk about the guy himself first. Giordano Bruno. His original name wasn't actually Giordano, it was Filippo. He ended up getting this Giordano name from his metaphysics tutor, who was Giordano Crispo, and that's when he joined a Catholic order. So basically, he was born in the modern day province of Naples, and he was sent to the city of Naples for his education. And after he had joined the Catholic order, he continued to study. But let's just put it this way, he was pretty much stirring the pot a little bit as he was in the Catholic order. He cast away images of saints and encouraged novices to read controversial texts, and it got really bad when the church found that he was annotating banned books. So he had to flee and let go of religion for a while, and upon fleeing, he ended up in Venice, where he published his first work, which is On the Signs of Times. And then this is kind of where Giordano Bruno's biography gets a little bit tedious, I would say. Like, he gets involved with a lot of political matters, and so he ends up jumping around to quite a lot of places, and there are parts of his life that are going to be a little bit irrelevant to the discussion, so I'm basically chopping up his biography into the important parts. I'm leaving out a lot of details, but anyways, after he made it to Venice, he then, after a while, ended up in Toulouse, France, where he got a doctorate in theology and he lectured in philosophy. And then a bunch of other stuff happened before he ended up in England, where he did a lot of his significant work, which will be discussed today. And then he went back to France after going to England. He ended up between a rock and a hard place, and then he went to Germany. And then, under the impression that the politics had finally settled down in Italy, he returned to Italy, but it turned out that that was not the case, and he let some of his controversial ideas slip to people who reported him, and then he was arrested, put on trial, and sentenced to death. And he was executed via being burned in 1600. So that's a very, very quick review of his biography, leaving out a lot of details, but just trying to make it concise and relevant. So yeah, that was his life. That's the person behind the work. So let's talk about Bruno's work. So Bruno came just after Copernicus, and therefore his most significant astronomical work would be expanding the Copernican model. And the main idea that he added to the Copernican model was the idea that the universe is infinite. And this is something that Thomas Digges did first, but there's a bit of a difference between how both of them take it, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. I just want to mention a little bit of context here. So under Aristotelian physics, if the universe were infinite, the heavens would spin infinitely fast. If you can recall what the Aristotelian model looked like, it was Earth, planets, and then there were kind of like elements around the universe, and then there was like the heavens. So in reference to those little details, if the universe were infinite, the heavens would spin infinitely fast. And it was also argued in Aristotelian physics that there couldn't be more than one cosmos because it would contradict an old concept of elements being displaced. And what Bruno did was essentially say, now that we have a heliocentric model of the universe, none of these claims matter. If we, again, accept a sun centered universe. And he is quoted for saying, the universe is then one infinite immobile. It is not capable of comprehension and therefore is endless and limitless, and to that extent infinite and indeterminable, and consequently immobile. And while Thomas Digges was the first to do it, as I mentioned, Bruno takes things a step further, and this is kind of where it gets more interesting. The furthest Thomas Digges went with the idea of an infinite universe was to postulate Olber's paradox. And basically, what this paradox claims is that if the universe were infinite and static, a dark night sky wouldn't be possible. There would just be there would be so many stars because of how expansive the universe is that there would be no spot in the sky left to be dark, right? Kind of the solution to the paradox that comes a couple centuries later is the fact that we only observe a part of the universe and not all of it. So it's not necessarily that we can see the whole universe, because obviously if we did, then the Olber's paradox would be true. So yeah, slight sidetrack, but let's talk about what Bruno did with the fact that the universe was infinite. Because he said that it was, he claimed it could have no center. He argued against the universe being a finite globe with a bunch of spheres within, because that's kind of how we've seen a lot of the models develop. Either it's the Earth or the Sun, and then there are these spheres that hold certain orbits with certain planets, and it's just this big onion, as probably a lot of the astronomers at the time would kind of draw an analogy to. But Bruno was against this idea. He saw the stars like that were outside of the kind of universe system of the heliocentric model. He saw them not as miscellaneous objects in the sky, but sun-like and having planets of their own. And for this reason, I think a lot of people ascribe him to the title of being the first to claim that there are exoplanets out there. And yeah, so essentially, to summarize all of the points that he made along with the universe being infinite, he basically believed in cosmic pluralism. And although Bruno did justify an infinite universe with aether, that's still a pretty huge leap to say that stars aren't just, things you can see in the sky. They've got their own systems, they've got their own planets, and we're not really the center of the universe. It's really just an infinite expanse. And yeah, I think that's what's cooler about Giordano Bruno. And I'm not trying to take away anything from Thomas Digges. I think what he did was also very important, but there's two very respectable trains of thought nonetheless. So yeah, that is essentially it for Giordano Bruno, and that's really all I have for today's episode. If you guys enjoyed listening to this small little snippet of history of science, then I would appreciate a follow if you're listening on Spotify, and if you're listening on YouTube, I would appreciate a subscribe. And yeah, it was a bit of a short one, but obviously we have some very, very big personalities to get into later, and I do want to fill in a little bit of gaps because, Tycho is going to be an expansive episode once we get into sort of 18th and 19th century. We're going to see a lot of huge theories backed with a lot of mathematics, and yeah, I just want to make the chronological timeline of all of these theories glued together, and these are some important episodes to fit in there, although they are brief. So yeah, anyways, I'm done babbling. Until next week's episode, I will see you all later. Peace.